Hello and welcome to October's episode of Let's Talk Oregon. I'm your host, Mike Ducett. And on today's show, we're going to be sitting down with two very important people from the Oregon High School. We're going to be speaking with Amie Mitchell and Allison Oscar today in their roles as mental health professionals and social workers here at the high school. We're going to talk to them about how they support students and families during moments of mental health crises and the way they function and help students overcome these barriers. So first of all, welcome to the show today. I'm glad to have you
Thanks
on.
for having us.
Your roles are obviously super important in this building itself, but in the broader Oregon community. And so we know that you support students, support their mental health needs, you support their families, but we could like to kind of hear from you, and we'll go first with Amie here. How did you kind of come to Oregon High School? How did you get to your current position? And then we'll follow up with you as well, Allison.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, thanks for having us. So I came to Oregon, Wisconsin via the Twin Cities in Minnesota. That is where I would say, have my most work experience. I worked at a really big high school, like twice the size of Oregon. And my role there, it was a school social worker, but my role was supporting students with IEPs. So students who were labeled as special education. And so as a result of that also, there were a lot of mental health needs, I would say, big school, big community. And I think that's where I learned a lot of my hands-on experience with supporting students and families, and also probably where I grew professionally. And I think a lot of what I learned there has for sure been transferable here to this community and supporting students and families.
Okay, great. And Allison?
So I also made my way here via another state. Although I grew up here and went to school here, my first 18 years of professional experience was in Colorado. Denver metro area. The majority actually was in, I worked in a nonprofit residential and day treatment facility for kids and adolescents. So students who were, living there all the time, were court ordered, had a lot of needs, a lot of mental health needs. That's where I probably grew the most clinically, as far as working with high needs kids who were involved with a lot of different systems. I got a good feel for working with human services, working with probation, working with GALs and court systems, but really my practicum had been in the school setting, and I really longed to get back to a more public setting where there were more varied needs, not such high needs, working day in and day out. It's really challenging, but it helped me a lot with my skill set. So then I went into a public high school and worked as an intervention counselor, so sort of similar to, they were looking for more mental health, as I think this field has grown, looking for more mental health experience, working in schools. So I was able to work with students like in the response to intervention, kids who needed special programming, higher tier level of needs. And then when I looked back to relocate to this community, or the Madison area, I found that Oregon was posting for a mental health professional, which just was kind of like a lucky, perfect fit, and was able to come back here to what ended up being a great community for my own kids, and then a great place to work. And brought that back locally, and have kind of grown the position here.
And so just to clarify for our viewers, Allison, your official title here for the Oregon School District
is mental health coordinator. Yep, I'm a school counselor by background, but also have my clinical hours and license, And
then Amie, you're a licensed social worker, correct?
I am a licensed independent social worker, as well as a licensed school social worker.
Right. Yeah. And so, is it very typical of a school our size to have these roles, or are we pretty fortunate in terms of resources for mental health here, or what do you think?
Okay. So like I said, this was something that was just kind of in my other state, was really kind of developing. And so when I was looking back here, that's why I was so impressed that this district had that posting. Now, high schools all have school counselors, right? And I believe that school counselors are being trained more now in graduate school and through their experience to deal with a lot more than academic and career counseling and all of those things. So I don't mean to say that there's a huge difference, that those people have those experiences as well. But I think they were looking for someone maybe even with a little bit more depth to kind of look at a position originally for kids who were maybe returning from inpatient settings, hospital settings, treatment settings, and just like I said, had an ongoing higher level of need. So I was excited that this community was supportive of that and was crafting and building a role for that. And it just so happened that I lucked out because I feel like I had the skill set that really catered to that. So no, I mean, I think it has become more common in the past, post-COVID, because I think that's what really kind of continued to bring that to the forefront. But I think Oregon was one of the pioneers and really seems to have always supported that.
That's great.
Yeah, and I would say, like, as a school social worker, Oregon has definitely grown. Like our department, the school social workers, there's 5 of us in the district. When I started, it was myself and one other person, district-wide. I had 712, she had K6. So that is something that I feel like as a district community, we are noticing the benefit and value of having different professionals that can meet different family and student needs, and yet there's also this overlap between some of the things we can do also. So I think a lot of collaboration, So ideally, I think it'd be nice, like, for every building to have like a school social worker, and I think what we have now is an awesome, like, our district is like noticing and then working towards like hiring more people to meet needs.
Yeah, well, that's great news, and I think you are obviously playing a huge important role here for our district, and we're thankful that you're here. Now, as mental health professionals, as you guys navigate this work, how would you begin to even define mental health these days, right? I think people's understandings of mental health has grown, and I think what a lot of folks may be working with more of an older definition of what mental health or mental health of sports looks like versus like today's version. So Allison, you want to go ahead and kind of tackle this for me first?
Sure, and we talked about this earlier, and I think we really kind of agree. I think mental health in and of itself as a term previously had more of a connotation with pathology, right? So like a mental health disorder or condition, where I think what we've really, and I think it's been teased out more, and again, I'm going to put COVID as a placeholder just because I think that opened it up for a lot more universal understanding and experience, right? People sometimes don't acknowledge things until they've experienced them themselves or seen other people that they know impacted, right? So I think that allowed an opportunity, I'll say, to talk more about mental health broadly as a concept, as far as like another factor of health, right? So like we have physical health, we have mental health. It's a continuum. Mental health in and of itself isn't a negative thing. We all have mental health. It's as far as like when it kind of impacts a certain level of functioning is when we might think of it as more of a disorder or condition or something that needs a little bit extra support.
Okay. And what would you add to that?
Yeah, and I would just say it's like how we think, how we feel, how we kind of navigate our day. And I think at any given point in our life, like our mental wellness can fluctuate, our mental health can fluctuate. And that's fine and normal because we're humans. And then like what Allison said, just like if it starts impacting our daily functioning, that's when it's time to maybe like reflect, like what's going on? And do I need some extra support? Do I need to be, talking to someone? But I think it's important, like we all experience highs and lows. That's typical, that's common. But when things get really low for an extended time or really high, or we're overly anxious or worried, or it's like gets to the point where your behaviors are changing, then those are things like, what's going on? Is there, other underlying things?
Okay. Yeah. So what I'm hearing is you're saying that kind of the way professionals are looking at mental health now is much more as a spectrum, right? And that it's come from a place of maybe a pathology and a diagnosis to understanding that mental health is something that does affect everybody individually. I like how you talked about that being even on a day-to-day, how that mental health may ebb and flow, but it's really where you step in as school supports is when like functioning as a human being or as a student has now been diminished because that capacity to hold those mental health issues has gotten so big. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's a great way
I
to
think that
sum
is a
it
great
up.
way to sum it up. I think too, we've really realized the connection between mental health and its impact on so many things, right? So kind of going back to what you just said, we know that our mental health and our physical health and other things, right, impact how we are as students, how we show up to learn, how we show up, it impacts all of those things. And so if students are not functioning well mentally, it will have an impact on often their attendance at school, the behaviors we're seeing, their ability to be in the classroom and to really attend to what's going on and be successful.
Right. So in your work with students here in the community, and I don't know if I like the word trends, right? Because I don't think mental health are trends. We just talked about it being a spectrum. But what do we see are the kind of issues and struggles that kids are having kind of in our community with mental health? And do you feel that those, especially, within the context of perhaps like 7th through 12th, right? As puberty and as they develop and change, right? Do we see are these unique problems to Oregon, or do we have data that suggests that the wider Dane County community is affected as well?
And I think we were talking about this earlier too. So I think like some of the things that we notice within our department, and I think it's important, like Allison and I work with a really strong department where we are able to consult with each other on different things. But I think some of the things that we notice our students are, maybe experiencing our anxiety, right? And whether it's someone who's truly diagnosed with that, or if it's some of the symptoms of the worry, the angst, and that's not our job to diagnose, but it's our job to notice and to also support, and provide maybe strategies or intervention. So I would say anxiety is something is pretty common 7 through 12. Depression, or that low-lying kind of depression. Students maybe with ADHD. And it's interesting because those three diagnoses all have similar symptoms. So like inattentiveness could be a symptom of any of all of those, right? Or distractibility, you think, oh, that's ADHD. Well, it can also be depression or symptoms of those other ones. So I think that's also important. Like when we're working with families or even other professionals, like it's not our job to diagnose, but what are the symptoms, and then how can we support that those symptoms, knowing that it could be a couple different things, but we're just really trying to help them where they're at.
Yeah. So this is a great, really important topic, but we're going to kind of throw it to a break, and then we're going to come back with more of this really important topic. So go ahead and watch a video from our sponsors, and we will see you in a little bit. Thanks. Welcome back from the break. So again, we're here with Allison Oscar and Amie Mitchell, both mental health professionals here at Oregon High School and for the Oregon School District. So as we took a break, we were talking about some of the current issues that are really plaguing our students today, and we were talking about how we kind of comparatively rank among other Dane County communities as well. And so would one of you like to kind of talk about the Dane County Youth Survey and what those results are kind of telling us about our student population?
So that's more of a like a screener that can give us some data that we can compare year to year, and it's given in Dane County every 3 years. And so the most recent data that we have is spring of 2024, and the prior one would have been spring of 2021. Now that one, it was really kind of when we were coming out of the pandemic, and I think that's when we saw a lot of really the highest numbers that we'd seen in a really long time. So I think, although again, I want to say I think this was nearing this way before the pandemic. I think the pandemic just kind of exemplified the trends that were already happening. We did see a reduction in students reporting anxiety between 2021 and 2024. I think we saw a reduction in percentage of students who were feeling depressed. And when I say those things, I mean like on an ongoing basis, not that those feelings weren't experienced at all. And we saw an increase in students who were seeking outside mental health support. So I think that speaks not only to the stigma probably being reduced on some level through all of that time, as well as students feeling like they could get outside support and it was helpful.
Now, in your work too, Amie, like how do addiction issues also kind of play into the mental health crisis that we may see going on with our youth today?
Yeah, so part of also my role and job here in the school and the district is really to provide service and support to students if they, for instance, have like a school infraction. Maybe they bring some kind of drug, alcohol, paraphernalia or item. We have a process where, again, it's not meant to be punitive. It's really meant like, this happened and how can we support you? So I work with students in that realm, kind of district-wide actually. So I think it's important when we talk about mental health and mental illness, how we can't not talk about drug, alcohol of use, right? And I think some of the things that we hear most about are e-cigarettes or vaping. Those words are interchangeable. We hear about like underage drinking. We hear about maybe marijuana use. So those are things that we consider and think about when we also hear sometimes about students and their mental health. Sometimes students are using those substances as a result to cope with their anxiety, with their depression.
Self-medicating.
To self-medicate, right? Because it does temporarily make them feel better. It helps them cope. While it's not a healthy choice or option for that person, it gives them that outlet that they feel like is helpful to them in the moment. So I think some of those conversations are what we have with maybe our teens, our youth, our parents and guardians. Like those are questions sometimes we ask our parents are like, hey, do you, could your child, do you have any concerns about drugs or alcohol with your child? And just to be able to have those conversations in an open way, in a non-judgmental way, because we know that some kids that they really do struggle with that, and we don't want to shame them. We just really, at this age, the earlier the intervention, the better, right? So like, if something is going on, whether it's driven by a mental illness or it's something drug related and it turns in, like the earlier we can intervene, really the best outcomes the child will have.
Right. So. To me, this is really sounding like, your programming for kids and our services for kids here really help us align on one of the 5 goals of the district with that whole child emphasis, really, that we care about their character, we care about their competency, but we also care about their well-being. And that
they're all interrelated.
Yeah, and they're all connected. Exactly. So we may have folks at home sitting here going, "Oh, I wish my kid could get connected with you." Like they have concerns. Maybe they're afraid of like the stigma of alerting the school to issues that are happening. So, how do you support both the students and parents here? Let's say a parent wants to pick up the phone and give you a call and say, "My child is struggling." So, like, what's that process look like, and how do we ensure that not only are, the students being supported, but the families and their needs being met as well? Like in that term, do you want to go for that, Allison?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think we have a broad student services department, right, where every student has an alphabet counselor who is kind of maybe the first line, but all of us, any of us, take calls, emails, things like that frequently, right, and share with each other or tap each other for help. I would say our jobs are so multifaceted in terms of like we are providing direct sort of like clinical mental health contact and support in crisis. We have triage, someone assigned to triage all the time, in our department. We also have students who we learn of through either their own coming in and asking for support, or a parent reaching out and asking, hey, can you check in with my child, to another peer or student coming in and saying, hey, I'm concerned about this, to outside professionals that students might be involved with that reach out to try to collaborate. So there's like a lot of entry points.
And I think I don't want to forget about our staff here, teachers, right? Oftentimes
Absolutely.
our teachers are the ones who are noticing a change in maybe grades, a change in friend group, their behaviors, you know, something's going on. So I think as parents, those also I think are things that parents are noticing, a change in friend group, maybe that, you know, a change, they're less interested in their hobbies, or
they're having more somatic symptoms, or some other things that are indicative of something going on.
So I think sometimes our teachers are also the ones to reach out, and we collaborate and work to provide the support.
Right. We have meetings where we talk about students who've been brought forward as far as concerns that we're seeing in those different areas, and we task it out for someone to check in with that student.
So it really sounds like there's multiple pathways into an entry into some services and some support.
Absolutely.
And what about parents that might be concerned about confidentiality, might be concerned about, are they going to be aware of conversations that are having? Like, how do parents kind of keep involved in the process and maybe allay some of those fears for them?
Yeah, so I think confidentiality is important, especially as kids from like 7th and 8th grade, you know, adolescents to teenage, they're getting closer to adulthood, 17, 18. So we do abide by confidentiality. And oftentimes I think students, we have the conversations like, hey, you know, how would you feel if we reached out to mom, dad, guardian? You know, like, what do you think about sharing this information with them? Because that's a partnership we want to have, and we know how supportive and involved our parents want to be with their student. And sometimes also, I think it's supporting the student maybe to have the conversation with their parent. You know, if it's something maybe more significant, we're maybe working with the student to like bring something back to their parent.
And I think just to kind of build off that too, that it's important for students also though to feel like they maybe have some level of autonomy. And so sometimes students will ask, or I will be pretty explicit about what are the kinds of things that would make me need to talk to someone about what you're sharing versus what could be something that's supportive to you but isn't at the point yet where I need to like make a call home and still try to get there at some point, right?
Like you're still as a school professional mandatory reporter, right? And you still have to follow protocols.
Yes. And, so if there is, you know, statements related to that, absolutely we have to do that. But sometimes it's, I have students have said, you know, like, I don't want to tell my parents everything, but they're okay with me, you know, like they want me to be talking to someone, right? And so like kind of trying to ride that line of like wanting parents' input, because I do believe that honestly they know their kids the best, and I want to have their input on things while also trying to respect what what might be a support system or a place where a kid can come talk, that it doesn't need to all be reported back to parents.
So it's a balance of trying to build autonomy for the student and some control, of the situation, but also understanding that important partnership with families as well is super, super important. So kind of as we begin to kind of close out our time together tonight, what do you view now as kind of some recent wins for us in terms of a district, as a school, in our support of students with mental health issues? And in what ways have we seen that track, essentially, as you've mentioned, I think several times before, since the COVID shutdown era to now? Like, what's working for our students, and how do we know? Like, that's a good question.
I mean, I think like in general, like our department, I think student service in general, like throughout the district, is robust, and I think there's a lot of really well-trained staff to meet needs. I think even something like the different kind of levels of intervention, we call it, it's kind of like a school term, like an intervention that we provide to students, whether that's academically, socially, emotionally. Oftentimes there's just common language we use in a school too, which I think is important. Some other things that we talked about?
Yeah, I mean, I think they've been visioning building this capacity or infrastructure since even like shortly before the pandemic, and it's almost like you build it and it will come. But like it, I feel like the district as a whole from the top down has really been supportive of mental health and acknowledging of mental health. And continues to commit to that. And I think, like I said, it goes along with one of their values, but I feel like even as building outside of student services, we continue to focus on understanding the impact, right? We've done trauma-informed training as a whole staff. We've done, we do SEL. We incorporate and embed a lot of those things that we know are like proactive or that are very foundational into a lot of the ways that we work with students. And so that's everyone, right?
And I think we also have really great partnerships too, not only with Oregon Mental Health. We have clinicians that come into our school 5 days a week, K through 12, and with parent permission and insurance providers, like students are going through their day pretty seamlessly, getting their academic needs met, getting their mental health needs met, going back to academics. So that is something that really removes barriers for families, because it can be really, really tricky when you have a 13-year-old that needs to get to a therapy appointment at 10 o'clock in the morning. That's hard for families. And so I think that's one thing that we have made accessible to our families. I think having a good relationship with Journey Mental Health down in Madison, we're able to call them when we have more mental health crises, and we're able to problem solve with them, with the student. Sometimes it's with the student and their family, to really come up with supportive plans.
For after school time.
Yeah.
I was going to say, we've actually even last year, kind of the board approved a policy to allow telehealth in the building for certain, that fell under certain parameters, which I think really also was another way that reduced some barriers for students who were getting outside mental health support and didn't then have to leave the school, but could find a private area to still participate in that.
I know the district really believes in equity, and we're really making equitable access for all and for those who would need it. Now, I do have one kind of last follow-up that's maybe a little personal, but how do you take care of yourselves? This is hard work, and it's taxing work. How do you maintain your own mental health? What kind of self-care do you model, for others? Like, this is heavy lifting.
And I think ironically, like years ago when I did my education, that was something that's built into part of our curriculum, was self-care, like as a social worker. That's how I was first and foremost trained, as like a community social worker. So I do think it's super valid. And I think things that I enjoy doing, I enjoy being out in nature. I enjoy, like, my physical health makes my mental health well, right? And I think that's also something, I think when we have students in our office, to talk about those things too, like being outside, being in the sun, being in nature. So I like to move my body, I like to read, I like to spend time with family and friends. Those are all things that rejuvenate me, and I know I need those. I know when I don't have those, that's when I start feeling kind of sluggish. My energy decreases, and I think sometimes, like, we can weave those into even our conversations with our adolescent and teens. Like, this is something that I practice. What are some things that you do?
It's good reminders.
And no, those are great. I do my own, like personal hobbies, things I like, try to keep a sleep-wake cycle, those things. Try to find, because I we do work with tough situations, and sometimes hear a lot of things. I feel like in my professional life, I've gained some level of, just as anyone has to do, with like my own, not that I shut it off, but like I have to be able to be at home in an environment where it's not consuming me, which has taken time and taken experience and skill as just professionally and growing older to do, I think. But it's important. I also feel like I use my colleagues and our team as just with the ability to vent sometimes and use humor and things that are just a way to kind of deflect from some of the difficulty and the difficult topics.
Well, those are all really great suggestions, and we'd like to really thank you for coming on tonight and to kind of make this process visible to our community. And you're very, very important people, and very important to our Oregon community as well. So thank you for taking the time. And folks out there listening, remember, this might have been a topic that was hard for you to listen to. So take care of yourself, seek out your self-care opportunities as well. Or if this all is reminiscent to you, seek help from mental health professionals as well, and remove that stigma and barrier. So we'll see you next time on Let's Talk Oregon. Thanks.